So this morning I've come down here into the chook yard to try and rescue this grapefruit tree that was blown over in our recent winds. This tree is heavily loaded with fruit and there's no easy way for me to stand it up, and there's certainly no way I'm going to be able to do it with the fruit that's on it or even with the leaf that's on it. With it blowing over, it is obviously already damaged roots, and standing it up is going to damage roots again. I need to get it done before this ground dries out. We're getting sunshine now, and the rain seems to have passed for a while. So the soil's going to dry out fairly quickly, and while it's still damp and soft, I need to get it stood up again, in the hope that I can actually rescue it and keep it alive, because to have to take it out and start with a new grapefruit tree is going to set us back a number of years, or I'd say more years than getting this up, even though we're going to have to prune it very heavily. So my first mission is to get the fruit off. Now, where possible, I'm trying to clip the fruit off because that keeps the stem intact and will allow it to keep longer. A lot of these are quite small because I didn't do any thinning. They were quite high, so actually bringing the tree down and lower where you can get to it and thin it will be a good thing. Though it's quite disappointing to be picking this fruit, because if the tree hadn't blown over, this fruit could have stayed on till summertime and be picked as we needed it. Now, I'm obviously going to be picking here for quite some time. While I'm doing that, I'm going to take you across the fence and show you what happened in the forest adjacent to this, the force of the wind that came along. It wasn't just the weight of the fruit that was on the tree that caused it to come over in the wind. It was indeed the sheer force of the wind. Directly over the fence in the forest here from the tree, you can see behind me the damage that this gust of wind caused to this section of dogwood here that's regrowth along the edge of the forest, and has been here for quite a number of years now, growing quite large. And the gust of wind that came through directly and hit that grapefruit tree also impacted this. And it was a fairly narrow gust, because along the face of this forest here, this is the only spot where there is major damage. The winds were really strong, and as everybody here in the northwest of Tasmania is aware, caused a lot of damage for other people. Many suffered more severely than we did. But you get these particularly narrow gusts of wind sometimes, and it was really just one of those odds that it actually hit that grapefruit tree and pushed it over. Well, I picked several bins of grapefruit. Now, it might prove in the long term that some of these are just too young, too small, too green to be of use, but we'll get something out of them. We'll put them in the cellar and we'll give some away. We'll make some into marmalade, juice them and use them. Unfortunately, grapefruit don't keep overly well, so they need to be used fairly quickly. Now, these ones here are the ones that I've identified as coming from last year's crop. So these have been on the tree in excess of 12 months. And you can really tell that by the fact that they look more scabby. You know, the birds have been on them and all sorts of things. Now, generally speaking, they really don't keep well once they're picked. They're soft already and need to be used really quickly, so that's why I've kept them aside. The skins are not nice, so you wouldn't want to use these for marmalade, but they're fine for juicing. There's still some fruit in there, but getting to it can be a little bit painful. I've already got a few pricks from the spikes, and they can be painful after a day or two. So what I'm going to do is to start actually pruning it back, and as I do, I can then actually pick some of this fruit that's more internal in the tree easier. Now, in pruning it, I'm trying to achieve a few things. One, I'm wanting to reduce the weight, obviously, I'm also trying to reduce the amount of leaf, so to reduce evaporation, but still to keep enough leaf to actually feed the plant itself. And at the same time, trying to achieve a reasonable shape. To get that might require more than one cut to some of these branches. Well, as you can see, I've really unloaded this tree. Perhaps a bit more than I needed to, but it's going to take a couple of years to recover. So I'm still tidying up this a little bit, taking a bit more off. It's really hard to judge shape at this stage because it's still on its side. But I just want to unload these all a little bit. The question is, can I actually physically move this tree now that it is unloaded? Oh yes, but not well enough to bring it back up myself. I hear cracking sounds in there, which is undoubtedly root damage occurring, and that's unavoidable. I've been to the shed and I've got a tree protector, an anchor chain and a hand winch. Now I've got an anchor point on the greenhouse here that is pretty much in perfect line with the direction that the tree is leading. The only issue I have is the fence is in the road, so I'm going to have to open that a little bit to get the line through. And we'll hook it up, see how we go. I think to use the length, I'm going to just run this through. It's not the way you do it to winch a four-wheel drive, but I'm not winching a four-wheel drive. Well, I suspect that's pretty close to where it used to be. It's got a fair bit of tension on it. So what I need to do now is find a way of actually keeping it in this position. My plan at this stage is a couple of star pickets, a wire, and something to protect the tree in terms of holding it there. Back from the shed, to shield the wire, I found a little piece of shark bite, which is a very hard type of hose. So if I can get the wire through that, it'll really stop the wire cutting into the tree. And I've got to decide where I'm going to come. Yeah, something like that I think would be a good spot. Now, instead of using star pickets as I first thought, I found a couple of pieces of pipe, and I've drilled holes in them to run the wire through, and that can be nice and close to the ground and should give a good hold. So I'll hammer one of those in. With that now in place, I will let the winch off and we'll see how it holds. Well, it's holding reasonably well. It moved a little bit, but I actually expected that. You always have to pull it a little further than you want it to stay. There's a fair bit of tension on it. So now it's a clean-up process. where this is actually pressing on, it's pressing on this branch as well as on the back. There was no perfect place to put it. If I came lower, it was likely to slip down, and higher was still going to impact a branch. So that was pretty much as good as I could get. And now I've got a few jobs to do. One is I need to pick the rest of the grapefruit that's on the pieces that I've cut off and get those bits over the fence so that I can clean them away later with the tractor. I'm also going to look at these wounds and see which I can tidy up. I'm reasonably happy with the cut here in terms of the leaves now. I think I'll leave that as it is. I think if it survives, which I am really hoping it does, will just guide the growth that comes out. It will shoot quite a bit out of this area, and we'll have to trim that in the next couple of years. The roots, look, obviously there's been some damage, but hopefully it is not sufficient to kill the tree. Before I get too excited with anything else, one thing I've decided to do is to get a bit of electrical tape around this wire to make it more visible, because otherwise I'm going to be tripping over it. I'm just going to tidy these up a little bit. I don't want to cut them too short, but just a little. Now, large wounds like this, some people seal them, and there's sort of a natural inclination to think that you want to do that. The general advice at the moment is not to do it. I've cut it on a slope so the water should drain off. A bit of sun, I think this will dry over okay. I've allowed a little bit of space. I know there will be some dieback, but there's likely to be shoots coming out here as well. I would have preferred not to cut it like this, but really it was the only way to get rid of that head weight that I had, and hopefully it doesn't damage the tree too much. Another area of concern I have is the fact that the soil's been disturbed here at the bottom a little bit. This bit of wire that I had previously has really pretty much had it. The hens are likely to come and scratch around the roots here. It could do with a little bit more soil just bringing it around. So I need to get another piece to replace this. So I have a bit of soil here to do a repair, and this young cockerel's interested. Just want to repair around here a little bit. I have this old piece of chicken wire then to try and fit around again. So I generally cut into the middle. And then I have some irrigation pegs just to fasten it into place. It's nice to bend the sharper edges under a little bit. So, with the exception of the cleanup, that is this tree rescue complete. Tell me what you think. Will it survive? It's your guess is as good as mine. I really hope it does. I think it will. The root damage is the one thing that I can't really quantify and can't do anything about. but it wasn't that extensive, didn't rip roots entirely out of the ground, so I believe it should recover. This wire, however, will probably need to stay on it for a few years, and it's certainly going to be at least 2 years before we actually get fruit off it again. So from that perspective, the damage is a real setback. But that's all for this video and all from me for today. I'll be back soon with another video. Thanks for watching.